Today, we're stirring up Ghormeh Sabzi and celebrating inclusive supper clubs with Parisa Parnian of Savage Muse on Cooking with Pride. The kitchen has always been a place for people to come together and share their stories. I've invited a few of my favorite food friends from the LGBTQIA community to share their stories about cooking, connecting in the kitchen, and creating recipes that inspire others. This is Cooking with Pride. We're picking cilantro right now. Is there a specific way that I should be doing this?
We don't want a lot of stem. We just want the beautiful leaves.
Okay. Goodbye stems.
Bye stems.
Not today.
Ghormeh Sabzi specifically is often known as like the queen, the king of all Persian dishes, partly because of the wide array of herbs that are used. And also it's just kind of a long, laborious process, and it's really rich and delicious. It's one of those dishes where if, especially as a woman, you have learned how to master it, then it means you're culturally ready to be a wife and to be a domestic goddess and to get married.
How did it feel for you when you were able to make this dish? Did you feel that way?
So I learned how to make this dish partly by watching my mother and grandmother cook it. But really, it wasn't until I moved to New York to go to design school. I was missing home cooking, and I was missing the smells of like walking in from a long day of work or school and smelling the sauteed onions and garlic and the herbs that always to me felt like comfort and home. And when I finally figured out how to make it taste and smell right, it was really empowering. It made me feel like I can bring my culture and my ancestors and that feeling of home with me to New York City.
Oh, wow.
And to give me a sense of, it's like having a big hug coming home and smelling that smell, you know? It certainly didn't make me feel like I was ready to get married. That's for sure. I was not like, yay, now I'm ready to find myself a husband. And
you're like, no.
No, it was more like, yay, now I can have all the kids from my design school and from my drag shows and from the theater and from the clubs come and I can feed them food of my ancestors.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Like really claiming the dish as it like suits your life and experience.
Yeah, totally.
What was it like for you when you were growing up at home?
I was born in Iran, in Tehran, but my family, we immigrated to Arizona when I was 4. You know, we were going through a lot. The Iran hostage crisis happened after we moved to Arizona. There was a lot of fear around Iranians at the time and fear around people who came from Muslim countries. Islamophobia was rampant in Arizona, and sometimes the only safe feeling we had was when we would all gather around the dinner table, you know, and be able to like celebrate around really nurturing, delicious food, and for a few hours block out whatever was happening out there.
Yeah.
You know? The next step, though, is we need to chop these herbs, right? This is chopped. One of the beauties with herb cooking is that you can also use dried herbs to enhance it, right? Because this amount of dried herbs is like this much fresh herbs.
Yeah.
Someone's already taken the time to clean it, chop it, and dry it. All we have to do is rehydrate this, pour some of this herb into here. We're gonna pour some water into it. I'm gonna actually pour the herb into the hot water and let it soak for a while, and we'll come back to it. Cooking a nice khoresht, which, okay, so we haven't used that word yet. Khoresht is the term for all the different kind of stewy, braisy dishes that Iranians love to eat with rice. What you need to do is make sure that the herbs first get a chance to saute a little bit and get their flavors mixing together in some oil. We're gonna use ghee because that's the flavors I grew up with.
Okay. What has your like cooking process been like? Has there been a lot of like trial and error?
With the Persian food, for sure. Especially with like the crunchy rices, the tadiks and stuff. But even with Ghormeh Sabzi, I knew what it was supposed to taste like, right? Because I grew up eating it. But the first several times I made it, I could tell the flavor was not quite what I grew up eating.
Yeah.
And I had to adjust for taste. But mostly it's just you watch your grandmother and your mother, and they'll be like, put a handful of this and put 2 dashes of that, you know? And that's how you learn to cook. I'm seeing that the herbs are absorbing the ghee really fast. And I want to make sure there's plenty of oil in here when we throw the leeks in.
Did you always know that you had an attraction to girls and or women?
That is a complicated question. My own journey with my queerness has shifted a lot. I would say that, yes, my initial interests and attractions were to people who identified what we would call today cisgendered females. That attraction for me has expanded widely to include other gender presentations and orientations as well. But when I was a kid, I never even knew what a gay person was. I never heard the word gay or lesbian because we didn't have social media or internet. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that I had a really special bond that I was forming with a lot of my female friends. And in high school, when a lot of them would excitedly tell me about the first boy they kissed, I was kind of like, I don't see what the big deal is.
Yeah.
Why aren't we hanging out? You know? And so I had this I didn't know what was going on. But there was obviously a very strong emotional and romantic connection that I was experiencing with other females at the time that was different than the majority of my friends were. And I just chalked it up to the fact that I was a nerd and was focusing on my studies, and that I came from a really traditional Iranian family with really, some pretty conservative Muslim upbringing values around you don't even kiss someone till you marry them. It's not because I need to question my sexual orientation, it's because I'm just a good Muslim girl.
Yeah.
It turned out that wasn't true. The herbs and leeks are sauteed beautifully, and now we're gonna add the spinach.
A lot of green happening.
Yeah, a lot of green. It's a very herbaceous dish.
Yeah.
So we're gonna just mix this up. And again, this is gonna be cooking for hours in a crock pot, but the reason we pre-saute it is just to meld some flavors and get some caramelization going. Let's drain these herbs and then throw them in here with the rest.
All right.
Okay, so I'm gonna lower this heat a little bit. Now that this is lowered, I can tell you a little bit about my first kiss.
Okay.
Right before I came out to myself and realized what was going on, I was heavily involved in my family's really niche religious community. They were part of a Muslim community out of Arizona that was more modern. Like women didn't have to wear veils to go pray, and things were more chill. And I think because this group was doing things a little differently than traditional communities, the leader of that community got a lot of death threats, and ultimately he was assassinated.
Oh my God.
I know. After the death threats led to him literally being murdered, a lot of us who were active felt a little scared that maybe we were next or somebody was watching us. My first kiss was not the romantic thing you would imagine. Me and the girl were in a coffee shop. We were in the Garden Cafe. It was late at night. We're the only two back there. And after us dating and kind of tiptoeing around the fact that we both had never been with another female, but we were clearly wanting to be with each other, she finally leaned over and kissed me. And instead of me being like, yes, and just doing the happy, I kissed the girl dance, I got up and I ran into the bushes because I was certain some guy in the bushes waiting to punish me for kissing another girl.
Oh my God.
So that's how paranoid I was back then.
Oh my gosh.
Because, it was real.
It was coming from a place of this thing actually happened. And it was recent, too.
It was very recent. So that was a very bittersweet way to have my first kiss.
What was her response?
She thought I was crazy. She's like, what is wrong with you, woman? Now we've sauteed the dried herbs, the fresh herbs, the leeks, and the spinach together, and this is ready to be set aside.
This is so fragrant.
Okay, so we've got this done, and we're gonna use the same pan to sear the meat in because it has so many great flavors in it right now. We wanna take advantage of that. First, I'm gonna put the onion in. This is a good time to put the seasonings in, garlic powder, turmeric, which is really essential. It also gives it a beautiful color. I'm gonna put more salt on the meat and in the crock pot, but this is just to get things started.
Oh my gosh.
Can you smell that?
Color, yep. I smell this, I smell that.
This smells to me like grandmother's cooking or mother's cooking, all of the ancestors. it's time to put the meat in.
Okay.
You know, you can use lamb, you can use beef, you can use chicken. I've done vegan Ghormeh Sabzi for my vegan dinner parties. But for today, we're using beef stew meat, which you can find at most grocery stores. And we're gonna just get it seared in here.
What was your journey from Arizona to New York like?
So I moved to New York specifically to go to design school. And it also gave me a chance to really immerse myself in queer culture and becoming part of the queer club scene, getting to experience things like drag kings, which, by the way, I ended up becoming a drag king for a while.
Of course you were a drag king.
Of course, why not? We gotta try everything, right?
Yeah.
All right, let me see if this is ready. Yeah, see, it's getting nice and brown, so I'm gonna flip these. On the one hand, I felt so liberated and excited to move to New York, right? I got to live out all of my queer girl fantasies there. But through and through, I am a traditional Iranian woman too. I really am. I felt like I had two personalities. I had the radical queer performative New York personality, and then I had this part of me that felt like an ancient Persian lady who just wanted to cook large meals and feed everyone. And so I started cooking large Persian meals out of my tiny New York kitchen and inviting my classmates and the people I was meeting in the Middle Eastern queer community, because there was a very small, quiet, kind of underground Middle Eastern gay community. And we were all connecting with each other and having potlucks. And
How did you find each other?
I think first we found each other through the LGBT center, like through like meetup groups. And then we started like a secret listserv, a secret mailing list. It was the Gay Middle Eastern Underground Tunnel. Actually, it was through that I met a couple of Iranian lesbians from San Francisco who were visiting New York, who reached out to me to hang out. And I invited them to my house to make them Ghormeh Sabzi.
Oh my God.
That small dinner party in my tiny kitchen is actually when I came out to my parents.
How did that play out?
I'm in my tiny kitchen. They were sitting on my one couch, and my mom and dad called from Arizona. And there was something poetic and symbolic about me stirring this big vat of one of the most traditional Iranian dishes ever. And something about that just came together. I put it on speakerphone, and like in a trance, I'm like, Mom and Dad, I have something I have to tell you. And the two girls were like, oh, no, what are you doing? This is great. No, you don't have to. You don't have to tell them. You live in New York. You're free. Just live your life. But at that point, I just felt like I couldn't keep such an important part of my life, such a secret from my mom and dad who loved me so much. And I knew I was risking a lot. But sometimes you just get to that point where you just have to be yourself, right? And you have to take that risk.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. Everyone asked, well, what did they say? It's kind of personal. It's my mom and dad's journey and their story. But, you know, it was really hard for them.
Yeah.
But they didn't stop loving me. That's the good thing.
Do you think that there had to be like patience on like your end in terms of like your parents and their journey with your identity?
There was a lot of patience. The hardest part of coming out was understanding that it wasn't just about me, that this was gonna have a domino effect on my mom, my dad, my siblings, our extensive family, because of the culture we come from. I have a lot of patience for them because I understand where they're coming from. I've had many, many years to adjust.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that lesson of patience is so valuable.
Yeah.
I feel like going through like my coming out process, that was a huge one for me because my mom also comes from like a community culture.
So what's your coming out process?
Well, first I had to like come out to myself, and
Right.
it was something that like I always had an inkling about when I was younger. But it was hard for me because I grew up in a really conservative household. I also felt like the messages that I was receiving were very much like telling me to be that like pretty good girl. Don't try and do anything out of the box. And I also had that same feeling with my mom where like she was the first woman who went to college in her family and the first woman to like leave the country and like pursue this different life. And I had this guilt too of just thinking about my mom and her perspective of like, I didn't come to this country for you to just like mess around and like take this like different path. Like, I want you to have this safe, like predictable, respectable path.
Respectable path, safe.
My mom was the last person that I came out to.
Oh, the last person.
Because I felt like I had to create this like support network around me because also growing up, I was just receiving so many messages of like, this is not okay. I was actually really surprised when I came out to her because like she took a breath and she just started asking me questions and was curious. I remember when I was leaving her place and I was getting back in my car, she told me, you know, you are my daughter and I love you and all I ever want is just for you to be happy.
That's the best response a parent can give a kid who comes out, whether they're coming out as because of their sexual orientation or they're coming out as trans or non-binary or whatever's going on. That's the best answer a parent could give.
Yeah.
This is ready to go in the crock pot. In fact, everything is ready to go in the crock pot. The first thing I'm gonna do is put the meat in here.
Okay. Everything is so fragrant and wonderful.
So imagine how these are gonna taste when they all come together and cook for hours.
I can't wait.
Look at all that juice, delicious. Let's throw those herbs in there.
Okay. What was it like for you after you came out and you were living in New York?
Oh my gosh, okay, so we're going back in time. So I came out in the late 90s. While we're doing this though, we could also throw some of the beans in there. This is a kidney bean, and this is a black-eyed pea.
Okay.
So to answer your question, New York was a very vibrant and exciting place, especially if you were queer. You know, like there was a lot of opportunity to express yourself, and it was more affordable to still live in New York, and you could experiment with your art, with your performance, with your community building, you know? This is probably an ingredient that most people are not familiar with. It is, in Farsi, we call it limu amani, which limu means lime or lemon. These are dried limes. When cooked slowly in this dish, it infuses yet another layer of earthy, bitter, sour deliciousness that really complements the fenugreek and all the other flavors in here. The thing, though, is that if you put it in whole, the inside flavors won't diffuse. So what I usually do is find one side that's been smashed in enough that it's almost like flat.
Yeah.
That way you have some stability. You use a small, sharp knife, delicately break a hole in it. And then you want to have at least 2 holes, one on each side. Okay. So now we can throw this in. Do you want to try one?
I am going to take a stab at it.
That's great.
Ah, there we go.
You did it. Okay. Sour and herbaceous are the 2 hallmark flavors of a lot of Persian Iranian cooking. We're gonna add some more lemon juice, because why not? We want more sour.
Yeah.
Gonna cut these. And you know what? We can just squeeze it right into here.
Okay. Okay.
Let's put a little more salt in here. And then the last thing we're gonna do is fill it with some water.
Okay.
This looks like a good amount.
Okay.
So I'm gonna do a little stir.
This looks incredible.
Now all we need to do is put the lid on. So you wanna cook this for several hours, and you'll know it's done when you test the meat. It's pretty much falling apart from itself without a lot of effort.
Amazing.
That's when you know it's ready.
I can't wait to taste this.
Are you ready to
I am
see and
ready
smell
for
it?
this,
Okay.
yes. Oh my gosh.
Smell that.
Oh my God. Wow. That is amazing.
Traditionally, you serve this with rice.
Okay.
And you can either do just a regular steamed white rice, basmati preferably, or you can get fancy and make the traditional tahdig rice. The word tahdig means bottom of the pot. Basically, what you do is you cook the rice in this method where the bottom of the pot makes the rice really crunchy. What we're gonna do is first we're gonna put some of the rice in the plate.
Okay.
And we're gonna make sure to give you a nice piece of that potato too. I'm gonna put some of the herb and bean goodness on here.
Wow.
I wanna give you one of the limes to try.
Okay.
So we'll put that on right here. And then pile up your fork.
Oh my God, that is so good. This is so comforting too.
Does it feel like comfort food too?
Oh my God,
Amazing.
this would disappear in no time. What are your pop-up dinners like?
Guests come over and we all sit in a circle in my living room around a coffee table. And I fill the coffee table up with meze, like a lot of small meze dishes, stuffed grape leaves, labneh. And so we all sit around and people have to sit really close to each other on purpose. And within moments, you start engaging with people you've never met before. There's something about that space that creates such intimacy and safety. And so people start laughing and engaging and sharing moments about themselves before we even sit for dinner. After a while, I seat people at a long table. It becomes this evening of storytelling while I serve different courses of family-style food like this.
Oh, that is incredible. I think it's definitely something that people are craving, not only good food, but like community and connection around the food.
Totally.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This is a beautiful, delicious dish. It's so flavorful, and I've loved going through this process with you and hearing your story.
It's been a pleasure, and I've also loved hearing about your coming out story and sharing space with you to create this really like ancient dish. Cheers.
Cheers.